Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Geeks from the Multiverse. Today's episode is going to be an Evolve episode. And listen, before you click off of this episode, just know that these are really important to us. And you guys really just need to share this out. You guys might have somebody that you know that might be helped by these episodes, even though you may not think so. But let's be honest, we all know somebody that could use a little pick-me-up and a little bit of help. But this episode, we're going to be talking about mental and emotional resilience and the ability to withstand adversity in everyday's life challenges. So let's get going. Hey, what's up, everybody? Like I said, welcome back to the episode of Geeks from the Multiverse. I am one of your hosts, Matt, a.k.a. Mr. Grumpy Beard. With me always is John, a.k.a. Captain Lestache or Captain No Stash, Captain Half Stash. I don't know what.
Wow. Okay. You know what? Hey, everybody. How you doing? Well, first of all, no. Okay. It's growing back. All right. I was just doing it. It's
Captain Growing Stashy?
Growing Stashy. Or in this case, Jeff is, or Stasha. What was it? Oh. Jeff's comment is porn stash. And I'm just in there like, okay, cool. Thanks, man. I know I apparently look like, every porn star of the 70s, right? That's what you're getting at? Okay, whatever. Anyways, first of all, I was going to say real quick, let's get it going. What is that shit? You know what we say? Stay tuned or something. What is going on with you, huh?
Hey, I'm just saying, let's get it going.
I'm just saying. I just didn't think that's okay. We'll talk about your intro later. It's fine. Anyway, so yes, this mental resiliency, right? So I know this is just my experience. Okay. Military wise and everything else. The big thing is resiliency, right? And so I know there's lots of definitions for it and in the way you want to, portray it. But, I know this is just me, and I know we're going to go into it a little bit. But resiliency is like the ability to bounce back from really any situation, depending on if it's, stressful or not. Most of the time it's more stressful than anything, but it's really the adaptability to stress, right? And a lot of times is, with holidays, or it could just be a random event or whatever, we don't always prepare a lot of the times for the worst case scenarios. And so a lot of times, your mind is, you might be at ease at one point and all of a sudden you get somebody walking through the door or, and you get scared for like a quick second or whatever. Or you, unfortunately, you might have a loved one, pass away, or, there could be a lot of different things, but you don't know how to get through that process. And so, having resiliency of, being able to bounce back from, situations is really important to life, because unfortunately, there's a lot of different things in our lives, especially where, we look at it, economically, we're talking about let's say you lose your house or your car or, stuff like that. And now how do you bounce back from that? How do you move forward from that?
Yeah.
Right. And it's tough. It's not always, really easy to, always look at that, the light at the end of the tunnel, right? Because a lot of times we're all tunnel vision, we're just kind of we're getting through the motions, but there's no sometimes hope. Right. And so you're trying to find a way to, deal with all that by coping and, having maybe loved ones help or, support or, all these different kinds of things in between. But I just know that, especially it being around, closer to Christmas now, we're getting through sometimes a lot of tougher days, and, especially here in New England, when it's freaking, snowing and, it's cold outside, you're just like, who the hell wants to go sit outside and shovel all day? I'm sorry, man. I know that's what, you usually have to do most of the time, especially at your driveway, since it's at a slope, and you gotta shovel that shit out, and make sure that you can get to work on time. Hopefully.
Yeah, it's pretty tough. It
is true.
But real quick, if you're listening, on Spotify or YouTube or wherever you're listening, just give us a little fist bump, follow us, interact, subscribe, and tell your friends. Like I said, it is important to share these episodes because we do really appreciate it, and it can really help somebody, and you may not even know you're helping them because not a lot of people mention that they need help. So
It's true.
You may just be sharing an episode just because, you heard us say it and you could be really helping somebody. But yeah, I mean, I think we hear the word resilience and we can think, well, I'm kind of a resilient person, but then, you see like, that one person or that one event, comes into your life, or that one, the one circumstance comes in and, it just creates like anxiety, and your ability to, bounce back from those negative emotions, or to be able to actually function physically and psychologically, being able to go to work, being able to, get out of bed.
Or really just have the capacity to function.
Right. And that's kind of like what we're talking about. And it's like, resilience can help protect against, mental health conditions like depression, anxiety. It can help people protect, cope with things when, the risk of, conditions like when things like bullying and trauma come into play, when you can build that emotional resilience and, you're getting bullied in school, that emotional resilience can help kind of counteract those negative emotions that kind of can come in.
Right. And I'm going to say more differently too, but like even certain professions, right? So when I mentioned like military or like, let's say EMS, law enforcement, so on and so forth, like these kind of like higher stress jobs that, you might have to do every day. You need a level of resiliency, especially when you're dealing with certain situations and so forth. I mean, you may not even think that your jobs are very stressful, but, there could be moments in your job, whether you're sitting behind a desk or you're doing whatever, there might be like deadlines, or there might be other things that, that are really important to, let's say, the company or whatever you're doing. And it can be hard when, people are like pushing that added stress onto you. And now you're trying to, kind of overcome that. And also, you never know when a curveball throws in, and you just kind of have to like learn to take it and let it just go right back out in the world and say, you know what, we're dealing with it. And now I'm here and I'm trying to get through it all. Right. And so, I'm only mentioning kind of my experience, being on a deployment. It's hard because like, when you're, especially you're away from family for a year. And I understand that most people, depending on if you have dealt with that or not, it's difficult. It's difficult to, thrive in an environment that you have no idea what you're about to get yourself into. And, you're dealing with, people that, let's say you don't really know very well, and you're dealing with all this stuff. So you're dealing with new things all at once. And then when these events happen and you're trying to react to them quickly, it's hard. It's not an easy kind of like, I'm just going to keep doing it every day. Unfortunately, in your mindset of, being in let's say a combat zone, you have to keep a kind of a vigilant eye, keep everything on a swivel basically. And so it's hard to, always do that. And, distractions always come into play and so on and so forth. But and again, I'm just mentioning this side, but like, again, even for like Matt's job, it could be like, you could be sitting one day and then somebody all of a sudden needs medical attention or emergency happens or whatever. And then you're like, okay, well, what do I do? You're like, or how can I be effective as quickly as I can? Or, whatever. Really, it really depends.
Well, I mean, even a year ago when I was working in substance abuse, I was working for a clinic for about 2.5 years. And, initially my caseload was about 50, 55, which was fine. I mean, it's still a pretty, large caseload to manage, but it's manageable. But like, people started leaving, and then, the caseloads became, 60, 65, and then it was 70, and then it became 80, and then 85. And soon I was finding myself at 107, and the clinic itself, like the higher ups were still pushing this narrative of, well, you still need to see 65% of your caseload. Like your production still needs to be the same. And you ask, like, how am I supposed to see 65% of 107 clients in 30 days when I only have 4 hours in a day to see these people?
Right. So if you took, per week, right? So 4 times 5, right? So that's 20. I mean,
if I never took a lunch, I had maybe, like, if I never had a lunch and there were never any trainings or meetings or anything on a good day, like, not, like I said, not taking any breaks, just patient, like, I would have probably anywhere from 12 to 14 appointments that were possible in the day, which was never, like, ideal, but that would be from start to finish.
Right.
But, like, I still have to take a lunch. There's still, meetings during the day. So I probably have maybe 8. Maybe. Right. So there's still, and there's also a whole nother factor of this. I worked in substance abuse. People don't want to see a counselor.
That's also true.
It's just the way that field goes. And so, the amount of, like, stress and burnout was just so high for me, having 107 clients. At best, I was like 45, 50, maybe pushing like 52. And I was probably, at the maybe top like 5% of the counselors that were there that were actually seeing patients, because some of the other counselors that were saying that they were meeting with, like, the 65 or 75 or more,
right,
were just making shit up. I'm not even being, like, unrealistic. They would literally just say, like, see them in the door.
Right.
They would ask them, "Hey, how you doing?" And they would write a whole 30-minute note for that month, even though they saw them for maybe 2 minutes. When I was meeting with people for a whole 30 minutes and doing my whole notes and doing everything, so it's like, I just got to a point where it was like, what, enough is enough. Like, when I decided I was actually going to leave, they notified us, like, hey, somebody else is leaving, so we're going to divvy up their caseload. Your caseload's going to actually go up to 115. No, I'm done. I'm done at this rate. Like, and that's where I went to a job that was like medical records. And I was like, you know what, my job is the exact opposite. Now I'm like, the stress that I have is like, I'm not getting challenged now. And this is kind of where I'm at now, is like, I don't think I'm getting challenged enough.
Right, because you've already gotten into a routine. You've already know the struggles. You already know what to expect. And so you're already to the point where you're not, there's nothing new happening. And you want that challenge of, like, okay, so what else is going to be there when, I get there or whatever, or, like, is there going to be other things that happen, or whatever the case really is. And that's where, I also think that, resiliency and kind of, I would also kind of say burnout, some people say, oh, that they're two totally separate things. I mean, yes, they are, but they can also kind of play together a little bit, because, when you're at a job, especially where, burnout levels are high, you do have to still be resilient in that job. But the problem is after so long of taking it, and bouncing it back.
And there's there's a lot of other factors. I mean, there's, I had a bunch of patients die. There was one that really hit me hard. But there's just that, like, applied trauma from the patients that I had. And so, like, you have this, like, you have all of these factors, but like you ask yourself, like, why is mental and emotional resilience important? Well, I mean, exactly why we're saying it. You have stress, mental health issues, physical health conditions, poverty, addiction, discrimination. I mean, bullying, trauma. I mean, we could probably spend the next 20 minutes like
explaining you why, yes,
listing all of this, but like people experience trauma like in much different, in all kinds of different ways, like the loss of a loved one, divorce, unemployment, losing a pet. We lost a pet more than a year ago now.
Yeah.
And I can say like it was probably one of the hardest losses I've ever had. And social media, I mean,
don't even get me started on that one.
Social media can just flat out isolate people. It creates an image that's of reality that's just not real. I mean, right now, this one's more true than anything else. Politics.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look at how everything else has been playing. I mean, the fact that I find it very interesting, Matt, and this is where I'm going to say this, is, you'll say, let's say you're best friends with somebody for like 20 years, right? And then all of a sudden, you talk about politics, and all of a sudden, let's say you have a Democrat and a Republican in a room. And literally, there have been literal divides between people because they're like, oh, even though you've been my best friend for so long, I can't be in the same room with you because your political view is different from mine. And we can't have a conversation. So I'm going to not basically associate with you anymore. Right. And I'm sitting there like, this person's probably bend over backwards for you and vice versa and so forth. And you're going to break your friendship up because of some fucking view that you have between who's president and who's not. Who cares? I'm just going to say it. But that's the kind of shit, though, that you see. And it's like, this is fucking idiotic. And excuse my language, but it's true because, when you look at friendships nowadays, right, and you're talking about resiliency and all this other stuff, I mean, not only just with Matt, but a couple of other people as well. We've been through a lot. It may not, for me and Matt, I would say there probably hasn't really been a whole lot of, I'd say, traumatic experiences we've done together, but I know there's some other people like, Jordan and whatnot. Like I've been through some stuff with him and so forth, but but we have a bond, I don't just give it up that easily, but, I'm not going to say, you know what, Matt, fuck you, because I don't believe in what you believe in basically. And that's how our friendship's going to be because of some fucking view of somebody else. It's like that's...
John, I don't like how you like Nancy Pelosi, so screw you.
First of all, I'm going to agree with the fact that is not the fucking case because I've told you I never said I liked her, and this is why, we can't talk about politics.
You just can't,
Not especially on a podcast,
yeah.
but...
But yeah, I mean, politics can definitely divide people, and I mean, especially right now. I mean, if you walked into a room and just yelled Trump,
you'd be probably
I mean,
that stairs and everything else.
Don't try it, but you might get shot.
Depending on who you're talking to.
I'm just saying. But a couple other things like taking on too much. If you take on too much, especially too much too fast, like it can lead to you just epically failing, and that failure can lead to a low self-esteem, and it just, that's what creates that lack of resilience. And then the very last one is just unresolved traumas. When you have a trauma that happened early in your life and you haven't dealt with it, that certainly can contribute to a lack of resilience in your life.
Well, here's the other thing too, with kind of like when you were talking about like taking on too much and then the unresolved traumas too, is like
guilty.
Oh! I know I know we're all guilty of it, but I'm not.
I'm definitely guilty of taking on too much.
No, that one's a true statement. I'm going to full 100% agree on that. Anyways, the problem is that when we take on a lot and we think, okay, we're going to be able to do everything because, you have those people that are like really good planners, and then they're like, oh, well, okay, like how much time do I have left to myself? And it's like literally a bathroom break in like maybe 10 minutes to yourself. Right. This is where I would say to people, I'm like, listen, you have to, this is the prioritization of like your life. Okay. So like, of course, yes, you're going to work, right? You're going to need to make money. You need to do whatever. Got that piece. Okay. Now, if you have a family, right? So like both Matt and I, right? We have a family, right? So I have a son, so forth and right. So that's important to me. So you're going to have to prioritize that. And then, right. And you have to look at, maybe your friends and your family and so on and so forth, right? So, you start to look at all that and then you think to yourself, okay, so, an individual does need alone time or at least me time, right? Because I know Matt and I both agree we love our me time. I can't tell you that there are definitely days that I just need literal me time because if, there are times where I know Allie will look at me and say, I want you to come to bed. And I'm like, I love you. I need to be alone because I've already dealt with you all day. And no offense, not that I don't love you. I just need to rewind or just really kind of like mellow out a little bit and be like, I need me. Like I need to recharge myself a little bit so that way when I go to bed and stuff, I can just calm down and I can just relax and do whatever. But, the unresolved kind of trauma piece to this too is, when you're looking at, again, let's say death of, friends, family, pets, so on and so forth, or, unfortunately, I'm going to say it, some sort of abuse or it could be verbal, physical. I mean, you can go on, but when you have things like that, and it, let's say you're in a relationship, right? So when you, let's say you're, verbally assaulted all the time from your parents, or as you were a kid, or you were hit as a child, more and more, or so on and so forth, and you have a relationship with somebody else, it kind of. It makes it harder when you're, trying to deal with certain things and like, let's say certain things trigger you or, you're worried about saying the wrong thing because now, you're thinking that they're going to leave you or, so on and so forth. So, in life, if we don't deal with this stuff and we just kind of bottle it in and we keep it like literally just keep lowering it down to basically our pits, if you want to call it, it will eventually rise up and then, it turns into anger. It turns into, spiteful words that you never thought you'd ever say because all of a sudden it just, snap of a finger and it just basically comes out of your mouth and it just happens randomly. And so, when you start to think about, all the bouncing back and the adaptability and trying to do all that, it's not just easier said than done. I'm like, there's not a guidebook on how to do all that. I mean, each person's different. We all come from different walks of life. We all come from different environments and so on and so forth. But we do have at least one thing in common, which is we're human. We make mistakes. We make these things. And, for what, let's say one person, it works for, doesn't mean it's going to work for the same other person. And like, for example, what my, let's say issues are, or like traumas or what I think is more of a, more damaging effect on me could be totally different from Matt, right? So like he might be like, oh, that sucks, in his mind, but for me, it could be the worst thing on the planet,
right?
And so trying to deal with all that, it's harder, it's harder to know like what is the right thing to really, focus on in the situation. So, like I said, when we come from different backgrounds, different, walks of life, all this other stuff, my main focus of, let's say, bouncing back right now, like prime example. It's hard right now for, Allie and I, to be honest, when it comes to like certain things. So unfortunately with her working right now and me not and taking care of Wyatt, it's hard to, get a job that I would love to get a job and just start working. But it's also very hard to justify, let's say, the paycheck, because if I'm not, let's say, making enough to justify putting them into daycare and then maybe helping out other bills, and if literally all my paycheck is going into daycare, then what it sounds counter like, I'm trying to think, like counterproductive. There we go. It doesn't really make sense, so why would I spend all my time going to work to put him in daycare and I'm not being able to help in the long run anyways? You know what I'm saying? Like, cause it just, to me, it's hard because it's trying to figure out, what is best for my family. And it's hard because unfortunately there's not a lot of jobs that probably pay enough to be able to do all that and still pay for certain bills, and because daycare is a fucking bitch and it's a nightmare. And so, for me, that's hard, so right now there is struggle. There's hardships. There's things that, it makes it a lot harder. And, I know, once we could get to a point where, I could find something that is justifiable, then I will do it. I know sometimes people look at me and say, well, you need to worry about your family. I'm like, well, this is kind of me worrying about my family. It's not the easiest decision by any means, because I get it. Most people would say, well, just get a job. Absolutely. I'm not saying that it's not that. It's trying to find a job that is going to pay me enough to still do all that and help and still do what I need to be done, with my family. But, I know for you, Matt, it's just trying to make sure that, you're paying your mortgage. Well, not really, but the taxes, really, paying all that stuff and making sure that you're living and doing your stuff. And so, I mean, the difference is right. I have a 1-year-old son, and your kids are gone mostly. Well, besides one, yes,
mostly. But
but what I'm saying, like, so there's differences in that, and and the struggles and the hardships, but but being able to bounce back from it all the time, it's really an everyday kind of like survival technique.
Yeah.
Really what it is.
So let's look at. I mean, there's one character that I kind of thought of, like, resilience and sort of geek culture. Bringing this into geek culture. Not just like talking about this is an Evolve episode, but we are Geeks from the Multiverse, so I wanted to bring some geek culture into this topic.
I know, not to make it all depressing, but yeah.
So the one character I do think of when it comes to resilience is Luke Skywalker from Star Wars, because when you really think of his character, right, like in the very first Star Wars, which is A New Hope, that was the very first one he was in. You kind of get like, he was growing up, believing that his father was a Jedi that was killed by Darth Vader, right? Like, his whole journey was overcoming loss and fear from the point when he was on Tatooine to the point of being in Return of the Jedi when he defeats the Emperor. But like, when he finds out that Vader is his father, by that point, like, Vader is notoriously bad at that point. Like, everybody knows how bad Vader is. Like, in today's like society, like, he would be compared to Stalin. It basically is what Vader would be compared to.
Well, yeah, and I mean, it was kind of like a semi joke. Matt likes to do an impression of Luke when he goes, Uncle Owen. Never mind. I'm not going to say the next part of what he usually says, but you're right. I think that Luke, generally in this case, he's looking at the fact that, he hasn't really had a mother or father, and basically for most of his life, or pretty much all of his life up until a certain point. But, to say, hey, I have to overcome this at that age, and then, continue on, and then basically then find out that, yes, Vader's his father.
It's just seeing, like, knowing, I mean, at this point when he knows that Vader is his father, like I said, Vader is notoriously bad. Like, he is like the worst villain. Like, he knows that he's already responsible for Owen and Beru's death.
Well, hold on a minute. We already know who the real villain is.
But
just saying.
I'm saying right now, like, Vader is responsible for that because he's the one that ordered them to go find the droid. So, like,
well, yes, you're right.
He's responsible for their deaths, not only for their deaths, but destroying the home that he lived in. And he also, at that point, has already witnessed, Vader strike down Obi-Wan.
True.
So, you're talking emotional damage. Emotional damage. Like,
yes,
you're talking about somebody, who's grown up with his aunt and uncle, not knowing who his parents are. That's already traumatic. Not knowing who your parents are, believing that this villain of the Sith, like, right, like, has killed your father. only to find out that this villain is your father.
Well, true. I mean, because again, he doesn't know the whole story.
He kills your mentor. Not only that, but you learn like he killed your aunt and uncle, and he, destroyed your only home. There's really nowhere to turn. But what does he do? He turns to his friends, right?
Yeah.
That's Leia,
Han, Chewie.
And eventually, Chewie won't go to him, but yeah, he turns to his friends for help, as well as like meditating into the, on the Force. So, like, he starts learning the Force from Yoda, which is kind of annoying at first.
Because Yoda back in the day was not quite the Yoda that we would see later on, especially in the later movies and stuff. But you're right. I mean, when you look at that, that's where you would say in life now, right? So, like, I know Matt likes to, actually, it was the comment actually he made. It was before we started this podcast. He said, I'd rather just live by myself. I don't even need anybody. Now, there's some truth, but there's also a lot of, I'm going to call the BS flag here. Yes, I can understand, certain individuals feel like they could do that. Fine. But there comes a point that in everyone's life, and no matter what it is, you may think that, being alone is whatever. The problem is as human beings, whether you're an introvert, an extrovert, whatever, you do need people. You do need something. And you say, yeah, well.
DoorDash, whatever.
Okay, you see, that's Matt's thinking. That's Eeyore thinking, all right? So, no, because, like, here's the thing, right? So just a random thing here, but when I first met Matt, okay, we were just, talking, whatever, and of course, I think he noticed something that I had on or whatever. And, and we were talking a little bit. And so, like, we started a friendship based off of, I think I was wearing something to do with, like, Captain America. It's probably what happened. And then he was like, oh, you like Marvel? I'm like, yeah, well, absolutely, man. I fucking love it, man. I love everything Marvel. He's like, oh, really? Oh, I love Marvel too. I was like, oh, look at that. And then the friendship became, granted, there's a lot more to it than that. I'm not going to go into the story, and no, you're not going to mention it either. But, eventually we did, we started hanging out. We started, doing our stuff, and, it just became more of really a friendship. It became something bigger, but the thing is like, now knowing who he is and knowing that basically his wife likes to always say that I'm his best friend. You're my best friend, and I'm like, that's fine. And Matt, I don't know if Matt thinks I'm his best friend, but maybe not. I don't know. Matt, do you think so? Or
I would say you're my best friend.
Oh, look at that. He said it. You're my best friend. Now, Jordan, you might want to beat him up. That's all. I'm not joking. I'm joking. No, you can all be my best friend. It's fine. It's not a big deal. It's okay. And it's fine. And I will consider you one of my best friends. That's for sure. I have, unfortunately, a couple. So I got to put you in the group now. But Jordan, so it's okay.
I do.
Anyways, and it's okay. You can be his best friend too. It's fine. But, the biggest thing, back to the point here, is you need people, right? You need people you can count on. You need people that you can talk to, socialize, whatever. Like, or just go shoot the shit. I can't tell you how many times I've called them up or done whatever, and we were just shooting the shit. And, the biggest thing we do is we insult each other. And that's usually what most men do. We insult the shit out of each other because that means we like each other. Right now, if we were just like, oh, look at you, you're so cute. Yes. Then I'd be like, all right, what's going on here? What is going on with this friendship right now? I'd be like, this is weird. Matt doesn't compliment me like that shit. What is going on, you piece of shit? It wouldn't make any sense.
Right. But you look at Luke Skywalker, and he utilized his friends for help, and not just for help, support. He utilized the Force, and when it got to the point of Return of the Jedi, when he faced the Emperor, there's just a really cool moment, like when you're watching that scene when he's. He kind of throws the lightsaber off the edge of off that ledge, and he's telling him like, I'll never join you. And the Emperor then starts you throwing the lightning out of his fingers, and is electrifying the crap out of him. Like, there's that, like, he's recognizing in the Emperor his own anger. And that's
Right.
not like, he realizes, like, I don't want to be like that. And that's where he makes that decision of going, no, like, I'm not going to be this angry person like you. And he makes that decision of going, no, like, and that's where that resiliency comes in for Luke, where he throws that lightsaber not just like on the floor next to his foot where he can easily just pick it back up and,
Right.
No, he throws it completely off of the lead, and yeah, I mean, he gets electrified to shit until, Vader realizes too, I think, in seeing his son being, electrified.
Well, so this is where I know when you start to look at, we'll say this really the sixth movie, or episode 6, but the problem is like, when you look at I call it the precursor trilogy, really, kind of the whole thing, but like, when you look at, Anakin becoming Vader and, he doesn't, he becomes angry and he's like, well, why is this the case? And blah, blah, blah. And he's, questioning the Jedi Order. He's doing all this stuff and it becomes so angry, and he becomes Vader and then so on and so forth, and then Palpatine comes in and saves him and says, you're going to be, my apprentice, and all that shit.
Right.
The thing is that, it takes that long. I mean, granted, I know we're not going into timelines. It's not the big
Yeah, and Anakin didn't have like,
he didn't have a purpose.
He didn't have good resiliency in the prequel, because that's where you can see like he was really like just focused so much on what was happening to him.
Right. And the words that were being said to him from Palpatine really, kind of enforced that kind of bad resilience that he was practicing. But like what were you just saying about like with Palpatine and everything else, and with his son being electrocuted right in front of him, and then realizing that for all this time it was like I was going to say
it's sort of like I look at it as like the Grinch. Like,
yes, exactly.
You take the Grinch and like, granted, like we were at my dad's house for Thanksgiving, and I won't go into the story of almost dying when we got there, but
let's not go there.
But we were watching like the animated version, and we were talking about how different they changed the story, where it's almost like in the animated version, it wasn't so much of like he realized what that by stealing everything, he didn't really eliminate Christmas, that they were still celebrating it.
Right.
And that's why his heart grew. And that's where, like, I think he saw Luke embrace this idea, like, he didn't need to be this way. He made a choice of saying, no, I'm not going to be like you. And then is seeing him being, basically tortured in front of him. And now, you have Vader standing there going, if he can make that choice, I think I can make that choice. And that's why, you watch the movie and you can see him. He looks back at the Emperor and he's looking at Luke and he looks back at him. And then that's where you have him, lifting up the Emperor and he throws him over the edge.
Right. What I was going to say is actually what I was going to ask, which Grinch movie were you talking about? Was it the older one or the newer one that they came out with?
The newer animated one.
Okay. Well, I was just asking.
Yeah, because the newer animated one, they made it sound like, because what ended up happening was in that movie, Cindy Lou Who traps him, and then whatever she says to him is what resonates in him, which is what makes him change.
Right, but I know in like the older, like the kind of more like the 60s one, that one was more like he was watching.
Yeah, he steals all the stuff and then is kind of like, I did it. I stopped Christmas from coming.
And then he watches everybody.
They all wake up and he's like, I'm going to watch them and see them cry and everything. And like, they just get around the the tree that has no lights or whatever, and
they go Dahu forest Dahu. Yeah. Anyways, let's not go that far. But yeah,
and he's like, they're still singing, and and he's like, well, maybe it doesn't come from but that's where it changes, and he's seeing them still celebrate, and that's where I think it's the same for Vader. Like he's seeing Luke,
right,
still make those choices, and he's like, I think it's possible that people can change, and I can do the very same thing. And
yeah.
And that's where you see that resilience in pop culture, and Luke's not the only one. I mean, that's the one I thought that was kind of the most prevalent, but I think we can get into some of these key strategies, John, for building resilience.
All right. Well, I'll take the first one. So building a strong support network. Oh, wait, even kind of like what, we've been talking about already with like, building your friendships, building those relationships with your, could be family, could be acquaintances at work, could be whatever, right? Whatever you feel is going to be important to you. So in this case, right, they emphasize the importance of surrounding yourself with positive, supportive people. So people who actually will help you and not perpetrate, your distress. So, a lot of times this is where I always think of like you always have like that one bad influence friend. I always think of like high school because like, you're trying to like fit into everybody and you're kind of like trying to play the field a little bit with your friendships. And then you have like this one like dude that you're like, oh, this guy's really cool. And then like, he gets into stupid shit. And then you're like, you get involved in his stupid shit. And you're like,
it's like, dude, I have to go to work. He's like, dude, fuck work. Come on,
hey,
out with me, man.
Let's get high, man. Like, let's come on, man.
Like, no, I have to go to work.
I mean,
you don't have to go to work today, bro. Just call him and don't tell me. I mean, you don't have to go.
Have I tried that with Matt? Yes, but I mean, I was only joking, but it was a couple jokes. It's fine. But like, and then again, you're looking at your friendships or really relationships, quality ones take work, that needs to be matured and fostered. This is where, like I said, I know at first, for me and Matt, it was like, I think at first it kind of felt like we weren't like, man, we were like, we're just work buddies. It was kind of like one of those things. And then like, I think afterwards, once we started to get to know each other a little bit more, we were like, oh, let's play some video games together. And so, we played video games for a while, and then, eventually, Matt and I would, kind of hang out, and, I met Danielle and so on and so forth. And then, we just, we started going to church together, and we started doing all that. And then it just, it kind of came more like kind of full circle, so we'd hang out, and then we'd see each other at church, and, we'd do other things. So it was just like, we're spending that quality time together, and we're still building that relationship. But the biggest thing is really just it shouldn't just be one person doing this. It should be both of you, like taking the time. Matt, I only say that because there are times that's what it feels like. It says, yes. So it says, it shouldn't just be one-sided with them emptying, everything that they have to help you, but, and do nothing in return. So I'm not saying he's done the nothing in return part. What I am saying is there's just been times where I'm like, okay, man, you want to hit me up? How you doing? I think there was one time, I don't remember. I think it was like I was on vacation or did something, and he was like, hey, man, just want to check up on you. And I'm like, where the, huh? Did my buddy just call me? I'm like, what? I was like, this is weird. Usually I'm the one calling you.
To be honest, I've called you on some occasions, and most of the time I've called you, you never answer the phone.
And also because it depends on what the fuck I'm doing.
I'm just saying.
Look. Saying. Even though here's the thing, right? But here's the difference. Ready? Here's the difference. Even though I may not answer the phone the first time, if I do see it, I will. As long as I see it within a certain time frame, I will always call that person back, because I know a lot of times everyone's like, "Oh, you should pick up your phone immediately." I'm like, I literally may not have my phone on me, and that's mostly sometimes people. I can't tell you how many times I've tried to call people 5, 6, 7 times. I'm like, you know what? I'm done. I was like, because, the reason why I'll say this is because somebody will call me, and then I'll call them, and then I'll call them again. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to wait. And then, so of course, we play a little phone tag. And then I'm like, I'm just going to do it 5, 6 times just so that way they know that I'm calling them, and just to kind of piss them off, because now we're playing this goddamn phone tag game. Anyways, not the point here. And then the last point is really make sure your support system, or really support network, is full of people you trust and have more than just one person in it, right? And it says, you need to have at least a few people in there that you can trust, because if you can trust them, how will they, help you in a crisis? So, I know, me having, let's say, for example, a truck, right? Matt, I can't tell you how many times I've gotten a random phone call on a Sunday or a Saturday or something like, hey man, we're trying to get this refrigerator, or, hey, we're looking at trying to get what was it? A washing machine or something random like that. Now, there are times that, yes, I can help. I'm not saying that I couldn't. But then, there are some times where I'm like, yeah, unfortunately I can't, only because I already had other things going on. And if there was literally nothing going on, then sure, yes, you know what? Sure, not a problem. I can go have, not a big deal.
Yeah, that's like really easy stuff. But like,
no, I know.
It is important to like, yeah, I have a support network. It's my wife. No. You need to have like
more than just a wife.
You need to have like more than like one person. And I would even say you need to have at least more than like two people, because if you have a crisis and you only have two people and you call said two people and they're not available, your crisis is going to continue until you find somebody that can actually help you, and unless you just sit there in crisis mode like forever.
Well, and it's true. I mean, because the way I look at it too is, you may not always think that, it doesn't necessarily have to be, your, let's say your closest friend, or even like your wife. I mean, again, if you have.
Yeah, we're not saying it has to be like 15 people either.
No. I'm just saying like family too could be, that part of it. That's a big one, right? So like, mom and dad, could be brother, could be,
right.
sister, whatever, right? So like, and there's other people too that just people that that if you were in a situation that, yes, that you hopefully can get a hold of them and whatnot. But the problem is I'm not gonna lie, man. I've actually called multiple people. And guess what? Unfortunately, there was times that I didn't get any responses, or I was basically in a crisis, and I was just like, well, I guess I do have to figure this out for myself. So unfortunately, there are times that, you can, kind of, use all your resources, and sometimes you might have to, I would hate to say this, but kind of embrace the suck, because unfortunately, there may not be a better time, and unfortunately I've had days where I've called literally 5, I don't know, I wouldn't say like 10 people, but I would at least say, I'd say 5 to 7 people, and I still didn't get any response. And it sucks, because there's times where I was like, shit, I need somebody to talk to about something real quick. And I'm like, well, I guess I'm just shit out of luck, and I guess I just have to deal with it. But then there's days where I'm like, I'm not doing anything, and then I get like 5 random phone calls from different people, and I'm like, and they're all in crisis mode. And I'm like, so where the hell were you the other day when I had to ask you for this help? So what's going on here? Yeah. So it feels like that. So that's why I'm saying sometimes, it is unfortunate. You just gotta sometimes deal with the suck, whether you like it or not.
So I'm gonna take the next 2, because there's 5 in all. So I'm gonna take the next 2, and then we'll trade off on the other 2.
Fine.
So the second one is practicing self-care, and this one I'll be real quick with, because I think it's pretty
I would hope so.
But practicing self-care, this is, exploring the role of physical health, sleep, exercise, diet, and maintaining emotional resilience. The best thing with self-care is balance. You need to have balance in everything. So, you can't just always be working. You can't always be resting. You can't always be playing. You have to find a balance in all 3, because if you're just playing, you're not living the right way. If you're always working, then you're not finding enough time for maybe your family or your friends. If you're always resting, well, that's a problem, because you're not working and you're not like, you know what I mean? So you have to find balance in everything that you do. Like, sometimes, with self-care, you do have to learn how to say no.
It's true. There's just sometimes where, if you're, let's say,
even if it's for yourself.
No, I understand that. There's sometimes that you have to, again, just suck it up and say, you know what? I understand that I would love some me time, but, right now this is more important, because I now need to figure this piece out, or, if you're working all the time, right? Having the that kind of like work to life ratio of like that balance piece, it's hard. I understand that some jobs you tend to bring it home and you're like, that's not the goal. The goal is to not bring your work home, but you do that. And then, so on as like, resting, sometimes you might feel you might need to hibernate for like 2 weeks straight.
This is where like, I often see like these parents, right? And they have like, they have these kids, and I don't know how people, I don't know how these people do it, but like, they'll have 2 kids and they play 4 sports each.
No.
And they're like, well, Toby has, soccer on Tuesday and Wednesday and football on Thursday and badminton on Friday and Susie has, this on one, it's like, what the fuck, you guys, you don't have time for anything else. Like,
well,
and it's like, you're looking at like the father, right? And you're like, weren't you on the worship team at one point? It's like, well, yeah, I just don't have time because all my kids do sports all week long and all weekend long. They're playing sports on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, on Friday, on Saturdays, and they have games on Sundays. So you're putting off things that you enjoy doing,
right?
So that you can 100% just focus on, and I get it, like your kids want to do these things too, but at some point you do have to tell your kids, no. So like, I understand that you want to play 4 fucking sports, but at one point, do you say, listen, I really enjoy drumming. This is what I want to do. I need to have Thursdays. And I need to have Sunday mornings. So how do we go about doing this that works for everybody?
So you know what? And this is another kind of example real quick. So I remember even being a kid, and I remember this too. It's going to be real quick. I had to make a decision between music and sports because I remember it had to be like middle school. I was sitting there because I was like, oh, I really want to do, drumming because I really loved to play the drums at the time. And, I was also in baseball and I was in basketball and I was like, okay, but again, sports that, have different seasons, right? So you're not in the same one in that same time frame. So that's at least the benefit here. But,
that's also the problem too.
But if you're playing sports in the same season, then that's where it can be a real issue. So this is where, you're right. So like for me, I was like, well, I either have to do one thing or the other because it was going to take so much time. And especially because again, you also need the, when you talk about work, right, you're also talking about like, for kids, like school, right? So you need to have time to do all this stuff. So for me, it was like, okay, well, what do? I chose sports at the time. I really should have just stuck with music because sports didn't get me anywhere at that point, but that's a different story for a different day. But, so for people, right, it's like you need to realize that when you're talking about the balance piece of this, it's like, yes, you want your kids and you want to have that time for different things. But at the end of the day, the realization is unfortunately, you're only going to have so much time. And unfortunately, you're not going to be able to do everything. So there will be points in your life that you may say, you know what, I've done enough of this. Then maybe this is where you start picking up hobbies, right? And later on in time where you can say, you know what, kid, if you want to do this now, go for it. Okay. And you might love it and you might do whatever. But there will be times where maybe down the road, like I told my dad, and maybe I'll tell you this, I don't know. I've been wanting to do a softball league for a long time now. And the reason why I say this is because I'm not saying I'm old to be not playing, baseball. But I figured, I'd be like, you know what? Screw it. I love to play softball. I'm whatever, I'll be able to do that. But like, I wanted to do other things like physical. And I was like, you know what? This is a great way to do that. But again, when it comes down to like, my kid one day, I'm like, I just want to make sure that I have time for myself and on top for you.
Right.
But I'm not going to make you do 5 different things on top of what we're doing. And I'm like, no, this is where the balance of everybody.
Yeah, I think it's just like as parents, like you often get into this mode where it's like, I have to only do for my kids, and I can't, we have to focus 100% on them, and we can't do anything for us until they're older.
No.
And that's bullshit. Like, you have to also have time for yourselves. And if you have to say no, then it's no. Like, that's just the way that it is. And, you're not depriving them of anything.
No.
But when you're saying, like, I really, I really want to do what what I'm called to do. One, if I'm playing drums for the church, I'm called to be doing that. So like, it's not just like, oh, well, it's a really fun thing to do on a Sunday. One, it is, I play bass guitar, but it's the same thing. Like, if 100% of my time was like, well, this one goes here and that one goes there, and I just don't have time to do this. I would feel like a huge part of what I like to do is just missing. Like, I'm like a shell of a person because
you're basically the chauffeur for all your kids.
I'm just constantly giving out, and I'm not doing anything for myself. So this is where like self-care really builds that resiliency, in that you can really focus on yourself, and you have that time to focus on yourself, but you can focus on your friends, you can focus on your family, and it all is balance.
Right. And, really the focus on, what you can control here, the biggest thing that I was also going to just mention too is, the kind of like leading into this next part is like,
yeah, I was going to get there.
I know. Is so like one of the things that again, going back to that real quick for the self-care, I love doing this with you, bud, because I already told Allie, I'm like, listen, I like doing this because it gives me some time away. I'm spending some time with my bud. We're doing our thing. We're not, granted, we're hoping, down the road, sure, things will happen. But, we do this because, again, we love it. We love doing this kind of stuff. And it's not just because we're forced to do it or whatever. It's like because, we've now been doing it for almost, almost 2 years. That's just crazy to me now. Now I'm thinking about it.
Coming up on almost 2 years, yeah.
Yeah, and, we've just been doing it. Right, but we've been doing it for so long now that we've just gotten into the rhythm. We've got a routine, and we're doing this. But, bringing back to the, really the control that you have, so, introducing that idea of like the circle of control, things you can influence versus the circle of concern, things you can't, we can control this, right? So we can control the fact that we're doing this all the time, but like the things we can't control, let's say, is like, I would love to pay, let's say lower, rent and whatnot. I can't really control that because my landlord controls that piece of it, but, go ahead. I know you're.
So yeah, this is like one of the. I think this is, to me, one of like this third one is one of the bigger pieces to this, right? Because this is like focus on what you can control. So this whole idea of like circle of control, and this is like things you can influence versus the things you can't influence, right? And this is like things you can control, things you can't control. Circle of concern. And this, like, I've told my wife this many times. Like, there's just things in your life that you can have influence over, and there's just things that you don't have influence over. And for a lot of people, I don't personally journal. I probably should.
Maybe if you want to.
But journaling is an important tool for this, like this piece right here, because being able to make a list of all the things in your life that you can control, and then creating a second list of all of the things in your life that are out of your control. When you go to make these lists, you go through everything. Every single thing, like you can separate them into like whether it's an easy thing, a medium or hard. Like you can separate the list into whatever you need to. But then you can look at these lists and now you can actually set goals. Right? You can look at the list and you can go, oh, these are all the things I can control. These are the easy things. These are kind of medium risk things I can do. And these are the much harder things that probably will take a lot longer of a time to complete. Like, I can control them, but it's going to take like either months or years or whatever.
Right. I mean, so I know, well, just I guess as a random goal, but like, I'm going to say it like health, right? So like, let's say weight loss and stuff like it, that takes time. It doesn't just automatically happen overnight. Right. And so I know if you talk about like society as a whole, I mean, yeah, I would love to lose about 80 to 90 pounds and be at that right where I'm at, this and that, blah, blah, blah. It's not saying that I can't do it. Not saying that I won't do it. What I am saying is it's just also getting the motivation to do it, and having that, ability. And sometimes, kind of going back to the networking piece, right? You can also use that to your advantage too, right? So like, the things that you can control versus not, you can have the help that you need to do certain things as well. And so like, so I only mentioned the weight thing because you might need an accountability partner,
right?
Somebody like that, so you might need some of the other tools that kind of help out. So that's why a lot of these strategies kind of play off each other too, because you can use those to your advantage as well, depending on, let's say, the goals that you make, right? And so like the long-term goals, you might need somebody that can hold you, accountable to that, So again, having, let's say, a spouse, whether it's your wife, your husband, your whatever, right? You have that option too, or you might have your family members, you might have a friend or whatever, working on the same goals, or whatever the case is.
Yeah, and this is like, obviously, the difference between like, the things that you can influence versus the things that you can't. If all of a sudden, someone that you've been, you've either known or you've been friends with, or maybe it's a family member, all of a sudden, calls you, or you see them and they're just like really angry at you and they don't want anything to do with you anymore. That's something you just can't control,
right?
Or you've lost a loved one, or a couple October, like October 23, I think it was 23, when we lost Lucy, which was our dog. Can't control that.
No.
It's just something we had to deal with. And there's just kind of, there's nothing that I can do to influence that situation. It just,
right.
I can't suddenly make her better. You know what I mean? Like I can't make her any better. So it's just, these are the things that like, you really need to look over the things in your life. And this is where you can build that resiliency, and you can really see like, because a lot of like mental health, and I'll take it from that perspective, mental health, with like depression, or, somebody that has bipolar or other mental health, like serious mental health conditions, not just like anxiety. Like anxiety, you can be like, that shark's going to attack me. I can control that because it's just a stupid shark I can knock off the table. But if I was in the ocean and there was a large ass shark that was like 8 feet long, I can't control that thing. Nope. You know what I mean? So I'm in a situation that I just can't control. And that's just a serious thing. But like in as far as mental health, like these are the two, like the things that you can influence and the things that you cannot control. Like knowing the difference between the two things in your life are just so valuable, where you now can look at and go, I can influence this. I can't influence this. Because when you're in the middle of like, if you're bipolar and you're listening to this, like, you'll know, like if you're in one of those lows, rational thinking just went out the door, because now everything that anybody says to you is negative. You're questioning everything. Everybody's against you. Mm-hmm. And between the things you can influence and the things you can't, well, that's like the game of pickup sticks, right? Like, what stick do I pick up? I don't know. If you pick one up, you're probably going to pick up a whole mess of sticks, and
it's like 52 card pickup, just like you just don't know what you're going to get.
And that's the thing. But if you are able to, like I said, if you're able to journal and you're able to make these lists, then you can actually you can go through these lists and you can actually see, like, this is the thing that I was worried about, and it's on the things I can influence list. So let me take this thing and I'll set a goal. And you can set it like as a goal that can be accomplished in like a minute, in an hour, in a day. Those are kind of the easy list. The medium would be like days or weeks. The hard list, like I said, it might be weeks, months, maybe years. But like, you can prioritize your lists depending on the stuff that's in your life. And the things that you can't control, you can kind of just like, you can keep your list, but you can just put it aside. All the things on this list, you can keep it and put it in like a little compartment somewhere in the back of your mind. There are things that you can't influence. And there are things that you shouldn't let bother you, because if you can't influence it, you can't control it, you shouldn't be giving it the time of day.
True. Just like technically the next step, with the problem solving skills, right? Developing those skills, which kind of go along with the, kind of the last step we just talked about. Right. Once you identify it and once you start to break it down and, making it easier. So like even sometimes with your harder goals or the ones that may take a little longer, you can do the little baby steps that maybe make it easier. So that way, eventually it can be very easy to just accomplish those goals. So sometimes, when we say like, just take baby steps, it's true. It sucks. Don't get me wrong. It sucks when you have to only take the little tiny steps before you can get to that big step that you can do. It's just, unfortunately, you may only be able to handle so much at first to be able to
how do you eat an elephant?
I'm sorry, what?
How do you eat an elephant?
How do you eat an elephant?
One bite at a time.
That's a really dumb joke, man.
Yeah, well,
I'm just saying.
I'll be here all week.
I figured. Yeah, thanks, buddy. But it's true. Like, you take it one step at a time. You take it those little tiny steps. Just enough to basically get to a point where it's manageable.
Yeah, it's like I could eat a whole T-bone steak. Like, I could eat it whole, but it would probably be easier if I cut it into small pieces, for sure.
Well, right, because depending on how many ounces you get, all this other shit. No, I get what you're saying. It's it's harder to like like the old cartoons when they're like, and they just throw it down their throats, and you're like, that's physically impossible.
They pull out the little bone,
and you're sitting there like, that's not how that works.
It's like when they eat the fish. They put the whole fish in their mouth, and they pull out the little fish
the bones,
and
And that's the thing. In real life, you're never going to see that. But yeah. And then kind of goes along with the next part. Actually, I did mention this a little bit. Finding purpose and meaning. So again, having like a clear sense of purpose, whether through work, family, faith, or hobbies, or gives people the strength, to persevere in hard times. And it can be tough, because the problem is really, if you think about it as a human being, right? We need a function. Really, that's, I guess, the kind of the best way to describe it is like, you need something that is going to drive you to do something, right? So like, as a person, when we were just talking about balancing and we're talking about like resting too much or, working too much or, playing all the time too much, like all this stuff, like you need something that is productive, something more that is like, what is your, again, I call it passion. What is that one thing that gets your ass up every morning? You're happy about it and you're ready to go and you're excited about it, whatever. So like, when you're in your, let's say, line of work, right? So like your profession, your trade, your whatever, you do this because it's something you love. Now, trust me, I think everybody, if you could do the one job you always wanted and you could make a shit ton of money or just basically enough to survive for the rest of your life and not have to worry about it, I think most people would do that. I don't think there's anybody on the planet that wouldn't do that. But
yeah, I think it's tough because like when you're talking about finding purpose and meaning, like we have so much pulling, there's so much pulling in different directions when we're looking at like entertainment and politics and media and friends and family, even like, people in your workplace, like everything you turn to is trying to dictate like what your purpose is, like movies and TV and especially politics and media nowadays, like
because it's the trends, man. It's all this other stupid shit. And the reality is this, right?
social media, like it's just
right. And I think the problem is, when you start to look at, the purpose in your meaning and stuff, the realization is if you can literally say, you know what, I don't give a shit about anybody or really just like what is my purpose and what am I doing here on this earth that we call, the other thing now I'm also just thinking about it is your purpose should be always fluid. I'm going to say that because there are events in life that just happen and your passion, your purpose, your whatever, it can change, right? And it should be always fluid because, and I say this because like, you might be like, okay, I want to be the best damn lawyer on the planet, whatever. Okay, great. Then all of a sudden, let's say, you get married and your wife gets pregnant, right? So now your purpose changes a little bit because yes, you might be like, I want to be the best damn lawyer, but I also want to be the best, let's say, father to my children and so on and so forth. And then you're like, you know what? I want to, I want to go to church. Okay. Well, now you want to be the best, let's say Christian, or, so on and so forth. Right. So it should be always changing because like your passion, you may think it was like, this is what I want to be, but really it should be kind of ever changing every day in some ways, not every day, but like there should be like different instances that change that little perspective for you because it's not always going to be the same from when you first started, right? Because you should be thinking more, I'm going to say like futuristic in some ways, because you should always want to change certain things about your life. Because if you feel like you said before in your job right now, that you feel very stagnant, right? There's no challenge. There's no nothing. There's not really a whole lot of things that are making you think, okay, well, what can I do? How can I be more productive? How can I do this? You sit there and you're like, well, what the fuck am I doing here? Like, what is my drive? Like, what am I really coming here for the paycheck, or am I just doing it because it's what it is and I just got to deal with it? And that's where I'm saying this because it should always change because you may do things for so long, but once you become stagnant or you get into a routine, you know what I mean? It just doesn't, you're not.
Yeah. I mean, for me, obviously for me, like I do a whole lot more, obviously,
right.
than just work. But, I mean, with the podcast and with church, doing bass and everything else, like there's a lot that I do. But like, I think when you can find like purpose or meaning, like and it doesn't have to be like, something huge. It could be, a hobby. Like find something that you can do that can take you away from whatever, issue that you're dealing with, right? Like whatever emotional issue or mental issue that you're dealing or physical issue that you're dealing with, like that's how you build that resiliency in, maybe you go buy a guitar and you just sit there for an hour every day and just learn how to play.
Right.
Well, I don't know how to play. Unless you're like already, look, you can already play guitar. Guess what? Nobody else knows how to fucking play guitar either.
It's true.
I'm just being honest. Like, unless you already have a guitar and you've already took lessons and you already, you would already know how to play. Nobody else knows how to play either. And it's not like, we're saying, go buy a guitar and stand on a stage at a bar and just play. No.
You got to practice.
An hour a day, like go on YouTube, watch videos, like just play along, like learn how to play. If that's, if that's something that you want to do, go for it. Maybe get some, go over to Hobby Lobby or Michael's and get some sketching pads and some pencils and get some drawing stuff and, start learning how to draw and just something, like find something that is a passion. If you're really into tech, do something with computers, like figure something out. Like it's trying to just find something that you can be passionate in, that you're going to dive like head first in, and it will take you away, even if it's like, 10 minutes. I mean, for me growing up, it was always video games.
Right.
Like I knew, like, when I could just dive into a game, whatever I was already dealing with, like,
just goes away.
It just went away, and my brain focuses on what I was doing in the game.
Right.
And that was just me when I was growing up. Now, I mean, I still play games here and there, but like, I think I have enough resiliency now where I don't have to just like, I need the game right now. Just leave me. Like, I don't get to quite to that point, but like, there are moments where like I'd be like, I'm just gonna, game for a little bit just to relax and just chill out, just.
I mean, no, I know, and I know what you're saying. I mean, like for me, I remember not only just playing video games, but like, of course, my family was always the one that I was gonna say, especially not nowadays, but I would say the one that was like, okay, hey, you see it's sunny out? Okay, get your ass outside and start doing something. So I would go outside and I would do other things, but the biggest thing that I would do, and I would just sit there, man, and it's kind of like just playing video games, but like I would literally, I'd put on my headphones and I would just take a basketball and I would just shoot every day. Just keep throwing the ball in the basket. Just kept doing that every day. Again, I never was going to say that I wanted to be the next Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, whatever you want to call. I never said that. I just think for me, it was just nice where I could just be alone. I could shoot. I could just listen to music, have fun as a kid, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm still outside. I'm doing my thing. And then, of course, I would come inside too and I'd play games and I would still do that. But like, you're right. It's having that, that thing where, you're just kind of lost. Like you're in a trance, right? You're like, your reality is not there, but you're
and it's not, and it's not setting like unrealistic goals. Yes, we love doing the podcast. We love, being podcasters. But like, if we all of a sudden like started setting these really like, well, we want to, we're going to quit our jobs tomorrow. Well, you don't have whatever.
Oh, thanks, buddy. Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yes.
But we're going to quit our jobs tomorrow and we're going to just dive into this full time and we're going to just start making enough money. We're going to call ourselves full-time podcasters, and that's a completely unrealistic goal.
Well, especially right now. No, you're right.
You know what I mean? So like by doing this, like we're not going to set ourselves up for resiliency. We're doing the exact opposite of that.
It's called taking on too much and about to fail because then it wouldn't work as well. Yes.
So our purpose it isn't to necessarily just be full-time podcasters. That's a dream.
Oh, that's a great dream.
And
yes.
A long-term goal, maybe.
Yeah.
But like it's the fun of it, the work of it, the creativeness. That's kind of why we're doing it. It's a way that we can express our creativity and to be able to, hopefully connect with other people that are listening and to do something great with somebody that I would call my best friend. You know what I mean? So,
oh, sorry, guys.
That's what's important with at least the podcast is like why we're doing this whole thing is not so that we can set weird goals and be like, hey, we're going to quit our jobs and be full-time podcasters. And, pretty soon we're going to have host-read ads and, we're going to be selling, truck liners and,
all kinds of weird shit, basically.
All kinds of weird shit. And you're going to have ads up the wazoo and, Yeah, I mean, we have our own merch store, but it's our, we create that shit. Like, it's not,
It's not anybody else doing it. No,
it's not anybody else doing it. We're not corporately sponsored. We're just having fun with it, and whether you guys are on board or not, we're going to continue doing it because we're having fun. Who cares?
God damn it. No.
We're having fun with it.
See, this is why we're laughing about it. No, it was actually a beautiful speech, man. I like that. That was actually one of the nicest things I've heard you say in a very long time. But anyways, guys, I know that we've been talking about resiliency. I guess really the main point here, just hopefully to wrap this thing up, is, it's not an easy. I know we say the word and we might practice it and we might do all that, but the issue is when we're really in a situation, when it comes down to like, using these practices, these strategies, these things that we've been talking about, it's not always said and done, and it's an ever growing. I would say it could be an everyday problem. It could be once a year, once every other month, whatever. Really, whatever the situation that you are in that is causing you to, basically use resiliency. It's not always that easy, man. It's not always that just like picture perfect, like that's what it's going to be. And there's no guidebook. That's the thing. I don't think anyone, if there was, then it would be perfect. But there's no such thing as that. There's no such thing as like, here you go. Here's the answer to life. Here's what you need to do. Here you go. I'm just going to give you this little handbook here. No, it doesn't work like that. If that was the case, then shit, everything in life would be so goddamn easy. And hell, we wouldn't be even talking about this shit right now. We'd be talking about something else. It's the truth, and the reality is, life is a bitch, and it is what it is sometimes. And you just gotta learn how to deal with it. And
right. And you can be, I mean, there's a level of saying, yes, you can be resilient. And there's another thing of being, saying like, if you've lost somebody or like a pet, or you are dealing with trauma, yes, it is okay to feel it and to deal with it.
Correct.
But it's not, like I've always said, like, it's not okay just to stay there. Like, if you've lost somebody and you're dealing with it, and, you have a friend that comes alongside you and is like, hey, what's going on? I'm sad about losing my, my uncle. Oh, when did he pass? 1984.
Let me talk to you about something. You good now?
It's 2024, so and
40 years ago.
You need to get over that shit.
That was 40 years ago.
That was 40 years ago. but that's what I'm saying. I mean, and I'm not saying it's not real for that person, because maybe they were really, really, really connected. But
you're right, really connected. But yes.
And that was kind of a weird example.
It was.
But like, if they were like, oh, I'm really sad about my uncle, and they're like, well, when they pass away? 2022. Okay, well, that was 2 years ago.
Yeah. It could be like the same day that let's say it's
maybe it is the same day, and it's a sad event, and understandable. But if it's not the same day and it's just another random day, there's a certain level of like, okay, well, why don't we like try to build some resiliency? Like, why don't I try to help you get over this a little bit better than you continuing to go year after year?
Right. Doing the same thing.
Unless, and we'll end it with this, that person just wants to stay in that mode. Because I have met some people that just want to stay in that trauma mode where they've lost people or something's happened to them, and they just want to stay there. And no matter how much you talk to them or help them, they're just stuck in that mode.
Then you're not really living life.
And that, I could say that, you could say that, and many people probably have said that to them, but for them, like, they just look at it as real and they just can't move past it. I don't quite understand it, but it's kind of like, what are you going to do?
Well, I mean, the only thing you can do is, I guess, just let them be and let them figure it out. I mean, because at the end of the day is if they don't want to get past it or, deal with the actual issue, then again, the problem is with life is you're going
to experience those people that just want to sit in that mode.
No, I agree.
They're just not going to want to move away from it. And that's kind of, just the reality of the situation. You just have to, you have to figure it out and deal with it. And I wouldn't, walk away and just be like, hey, GFY, bud.
I was going to be like that, but I didn't.
But I think you just have to be like, well, if you ever want to talk about it, I'm here. You don't have to stay in this, in the same place that you're in. You can get over it.
It's called life, and unfortunately, we have to live. And if you don't want to live, then then I don't know what to tell you, because then you're just missing out on so much shit. But anyways, boys and girls, we're gonna be done with this. But until next time,
stay geeky.